Sunday morning. Welcome to a special edition of Breakfast with the Boys at All Lacrosse All the Time Live. I'm Gary Groob in Toronto. We are a little late this morning. Shawn Slaght is a little bit under the weather, so we wish him all the best. And, of course, in Connecticut, I've got Muffler Mike. Mike, how you doing?
I'm doing good.
It's good. One in a row. Not bad. It's also Pat's birthday today, so we won't be seeing him. He's already started to party, and since the Eagles aren't in the Super Bowl, sorry, Pat. He is doing other things today, like bowling. Enjoy, Pat. Rented shoes, like that. But we wish Pat the happiest of 40th birthdays, and I don't remember 40, so long ago.
Yeah. Pat, I don't recommend it.
Good morning, Eduardo.
Hey, Eduardo.
Welcome. And I am certain it is warmer where you are than where I am, because we are tipping the scales this morning at a balmy minus 23 degrees Celsius without the wind. And when I was out earlier, it was minus 35 with the wind. I thought I was in Saskatoon. But that's Toronto this week. Apparently, we're supposed to get the seasonal, which means like minus 2. In the next couple of days. So that'll be shorts weather for us over here in Canada. And that'll be that. But until that happens, it is brutally cold. Just a small thing is that, it was Groundhog Day the other day, Mike. And, the groundhog, he done seen his shadow. So another 6 weeks of lacrosse. So, yeah. But just a reminder to everybody before we get rolling here that all of our shows are streamed live across Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, anything else you can think of. Just so you're aware. Remember to hit subscribe, follow, and like buttons. Always share. Please enjoy the affiliates across the Stream Punk Entertainment Network, like Fly Like an Eagle, soccer, football shows, Stream Punk Cinema, Stream Punk Combat. If you've missed a show, no problem. You can catch them all on YouTube. Again, at Stream Punk Cinema, Stream Punk Combat, all across, all the time. And when you go there, please, A, subscribe, B, tell your friends, and C, enjoy all the content that is there, which includes retro games, interviews, library of shows, as well as a whole host of other things, fights, press conferences, as well as much, much more coming all the time. And remember, you can stay up to date with all sports by visiting streampunkentertainment.com with great articles from our huge staff of contributors. Also, a reminder that our show is brought to you by 60. 60 is Canada's newest and most exciting sports uniform and teamwear brand, delivering top quality uniforms and teamwear that reflects the spirit and identity of each team. Their commitment to innovation and excellence sets them apart, ensuring that every customer experiences the perfect blend of style and functionality. Unleash your greatness with 60. Now, important, remember, add Lax Talk 10 to every one of your orders and get a 10% discount on your order. Now, for you Americans, with the dollar being so strong, you already have a big discount. So why not shop Canadian? Let's give us some business there, folks. Jim and his group of people will be more than happy to get in touch with you. How do you get a hold of them? Well, number one, you can hit the QR code on our screen. Number two, you can go to Instagram at sweet_60. You can email Jim at info.sweet60@gmail.com, or you can go directly to the website at www.sweet60.ca/60. All right. We had a bunch of milestones this week, Mike. Literally every game had something going on in it. First of all, Robert Church is now part of the 400 Goal Club. Congratulations to Robert. Not to be outdone by that, Curtis Dixon is now part of the 600 Goal Club. Congratulations, Curtis, with about 412 goals last night. Incredible performance. Every time I turned around, he had another one.
Yeah,
that was in the first half alone.
He's just the fourth person to enter that club, so behind John Grant, Gary Gate, and John Tavares. So
amazing. Great company to be involved with. Yep. Now, talking about the number 600, and Rob Hellier is now 16th all-time in NLL assists with his 600th assist. That's impressive. Well, maybe I'm showing my age, but I still remember when he got called up to play for the Rock in around 2010 or 11. And here we are 15 years later, and yeah, here we are. Now, a couple of Rock milestones, and this is interesting because they hit the same milestone at the same time. Bill Hostrauser and Mark Matthews both hit 200 career NLL games last night. Impressive still. Ty Kurtz is now part of the 200 points club. Dawson Theed, with his 5 last night, is now part of the 100 goal club. Great night for him. Great fourth quarter for him.
Yeah. Turned it up a notch for sure.
Yeah, a few notches. Now, a couple of things that went on. Jason, thank you for joining us this morning. Happy Super Bowl. A few things that happened this week. Number one, Kyle Jackson has returned to Philadelphia. They re-signed him to a 1-year deal. They have noticed that they need offense, and why not start with one who can actually score? Next will be Colton Katoni.
And Jackson stepped up big last night. So
yeah, we'll get to that in a few minutes, but yeah, exactly. Now, Halifax, they're in trouble because now they're doing the switching around here. And we say bye to Stu Montour. Yeah. So, yeah, things aren't rosy over down east. Didn't get rosier this weekend either. But Rochester, I guess in anticipation of something bad happening in Ryland Hartley, went and signed Cam McLeod to their practice roster. Now, that's an interesting move, considering Hartley got a 1-game suspension, but he was on the bench last night, which was also interesting. But,
I'm assuming they appealed based on.
Well, they would have to have, right?
Yeah.
I'm assuming that everything be heard next week, and we'll get to the bottom of that. But yeah, not really sure. If you didn't play him, then you could have sat him and it'd be the end of it, right? Just a thought. What do I know? All right. Well, it's a little cool in the room here. Minus 30 outside means it's only about 15 Celsius in here. And, if you see meat swinging in the back, again, Rocky will be here a little later to, get on that one. It's cool in here. But,
yeah, how's it compared to Coburg?
Well, if I sit here for a period, a quarter or two, it could be close. Coburg, it just comes and blows on you. They have the blowers going for the ice that isn't there, which is amazing. I feel sorry for Ron Messer, who is the PA guy there, because where the booth is situated and where he's situated at the end of the booth, the blower is literally right in front of him. So he may be okay for the first half. And then maybe after a hot summer's day and being at the beach just down the street, you can wander in there and go, hey, this is nice. And by the third quarter, when the icicles are forming upon your mustache, you know that, my goodness, I'm colder than the beer I'm drinking. I'm curious when Trenton starts in OSL this summer, if they have a warmer place or a colder place. We'll see. I'll be traveling there too. So if you're anywhere along the 401 and you see me coming by, just wave, The tour will start, as soon as I get back from Herbeski, which is now official. I am definitely heading back to Herbeski this year. So
awesome.
That will be the last week of April and into the first week of May. We're supposed to be warmer. Hopefully around here too.
Yeah.
Man, it's cold here. That's all I can say. Well, let's bring up the pick'ems this week since no one else is joining us, Mike. No bowling going on. Mike came back to earth a little bit this week. Buddy still stayed with the 500 ordeal, but you're still sitting there 33 and 26, man. You're still almost at a 600 clip. That's not bad.
Rarefied air for me.
Yeah. Look at Pat and Shawn sitting there at 38 and 21 apiece. They are just smoking. And I'm trying to keep up. My nose is just above the water there, 36 and 23. And Caden coming up the rear there at 31 and 28. A little bit of a rough one. He was a the Western New York in him was showing. He went with Rochester in yesterday's game, and I believe it was because Rochester was the reasoning. So good enough for me. That works. But before we get into this week's NLL games, ALL had 4 games going on this weekend, and 3 of them are done, and one of them is this afternoon, and you still have time to get there. The Six Nations Snipers and the Oswego they're on their way. I believe it's the Oswego Bears, not the Monarchs. So let's hope they change that. But they're fighting it out, which is also why the power rankings are not complete yet, because don't know where to slot Oshawa just yet. But to go in with this week's games up to this point, we had a barn burner. I mean, an absolute barn burner on Friday night over in Brampton. We had the Whitby Steelhawks and we had the Brampton Express going head to head. Now, the hottest team in the league right now is the Whitby Steelhawks. And coming into the game, they were winners of 4 in a row. And, they came out smoking. They were up 3-1 after 1. It was 5-3 after 2. Now, this was a goaltending duel of goaltending duels. Between Ethan Harwood in net for Whitby and Lane Ruska in net for Brampton, there were no goals in the third quarter. It was back and forth at a rapid pace and no goals. And in the fourth quarter, it was 3-3, finishing this game at 8-6 in favor of Whitby. That's right. Whitby has now knocked off all the main leaders that were ahead of them, which now sits Whitby in number 1 in the power rankings, Brampton number 2, Peterborough number 3, and Toronto. Sorry, I think Peterborough number 4. Toronto won this weekend as well, but we'll get into that in a second. 3 stars in this game was Ethan Harwood, number 1, with 45 saves, only giving up 6 goals in the Whitby net. Lane Ruska was star number 2, 8 goals given up, 35 saves. And Devin Pfeiffer, who was all over the floor with 3 goals and 3 assists in this win for Whitby. Absolutely fantastic game. It's bad the weather wasn't better. You know, between the wind, the snow, and the cold temperatures, not a huge crowd, but the people were there really got treated to a heck of a game. Now, why is Toronto at 3 and Peterborough at 4? Because Toronto beat Peterborough yesterday afternoon at track 11-8. Toronto is probably the second hottest team in the league right now. The amazing thing about Whitby is back about 5-6 weeks ago, I remember having the Pfeiffer brothers on the show, on the Thursday show, and I mentioned that they were sitting in 8th in the power rankings. This is only going to be a short stay. Way too much talent. Well, they're sitting in number 1 now. So that's a heck of a team. And they're both missing some star players. So when they're in the playoffs, when they're at full lineups, this is going to be one heck of a game. And we're going to see it at some point in the playoffs. But anyways, with Peterborough, your main thing, Jordan Dance for Toronto. Of those 11 goals that Toronto scored, he had 5 of them. He was rolling. For Peterborough, their leading scorer once again was who? That's it. Aaron Woods with 3 goals. That's right, Mike. You got it. Zach Thompson with a pair of goals as well. But again, the one thing with Peterborough is they're getting production from the guys who are supposed to give them production, just not an overabundance of it. And there needs to be a little bit more coming there, but they're still a solid team. And this is going to be interesting. Ethan Robertson in net for Peterborough made 44 saves on the day, giving up 11. For Toronto, Sam Haynes made 49 saves, giving up 8 goals. So absolutely fantastic game. We had in the later game, Paris and Oshawa meet up again at track in the late game at 7 o'clock. And Oshawa beat Paris 17-12. And this one really, the difference of this game was the third quarter. Oshawa put together a 6-goal run, and that was the difference in the game. Led by Jake Gilmore and Zach Terry. They were just unstoppable. Again, leading scorers in this game for Oshawa. Gosh, I wish my screen would cooperate. Yeah? Josh Gilroy was on there and John St. John, both with 2 goals and 5 assists apiece. Again, being the facilitators of everything going on. Zach Terry had a great day. He was 5 goals, 1 assist. Jake Gilmore, 3 goals and assist. Luke Laskowitz had a goal and 4 assists on the day as well. Aiden Saint also had a goal, as well as Adam Howerlick and Gareth Hay. But Ryan Nolan as well. Oshawa is starting to find scoring from all over the place. Must be that offensive coach that we know so well. Uncle Rick, I believe it is. Great going, Ryan. Great going. And this changes around the power rankings again. Where they're going to wind up all depends on today's game with Six Nations and Oswego, but they are moving up in the rankings as well. That covers our ALL for this week. But, man, there are some fantastic things, and we're coming closer and closer to playoffs. A couple more weeks, and that's it. Next week, you have Oshawa against Whitby, which is going to be a heck of a game over at the Children's Arena in Oshawa. I'm hoping to make it out for some of that game anyways. And the over at track, you have the Brampton Express against the Toronto Monarchs, which is another absolutely stellar game that you probably won't want to miss if you're in the west end of Toronto or Ontario here. On the Sunday at the ILA next week, you will have Oswego versus Paris, which is also a big game for standings, and Peterborough versus Six Nations. Remember, we're jockeying now at this point for positions on who is going to be facing Brampton and who is going to be facing Whitby in the 1-2 slots. So you're going to want to, get them where you can. Get up in the middle because it's going to be dangerous in the end. Those teams are white hot. All right. Moving into this week's NLL, we had some interesting stuff, didn't we, Mike?
Yeah.
Let alone all the movement and shaking beforehand. We start off in Ottawa, and Calgary and Ottawa, and I had them. I picked them right. We couldn't figure Ottawa was going to be floundering around.
I did not. So
you were hoping. You were hoping.
Yeah, and we'll get to it after I run down the scores here. But I still have some concerns about the Black Bears. Ottawa does come away with a 11-9 win. They were down 9-8 in the fourth quarter after a 3-goal run from Calgary. Got them the lead.
Thanks, Wayne. Really appreciate
Thanks,
it.
Wayne.
Glad to have you
Appreciate
listening this morning.
in. And then Ottawa countered in the fourth quarter, as they generally do, with a 3-goal run of their own to take the lead for good. For Calgary, Tanner Cook, hat trick and 2 assists. Tyler Pace had the same hat trick and 2 assists. Hayden Dixon, good to see him back in the lineup. There was concern about him being injured in the previous game. 2 goals, 2 assists. Riley Lowen, a goal and an assist. You got 2 assists from Noah Manning and assists from Braden Maillet, and maybe that's kind of where Calgary just kind of couldn't keep up with the production. You hope to see more out of Maillet, but the Ottawa defense did a good job of shutting him down. Harrison Matsuoka, a pair of assists. Aiden Walsh had 46 saves. Also had a scary moment where it looked like he hyperextended his knee, but stayed in the game. 3 for 4 on the power play for Calgary, and 17 out of 24 on faceoffs. So a couple of bright spots there. For Ottawa, this is where my concerns start to come in. Jeff Teat, 4 goals, 5 assists. What do you expect? Connor Kieran, pair of goals and an assist. Rob Hellier, goal and 3 assists. Riley O'Connor and Sam Firth, both a goal and 2 assists. Larson Sundown, just 2 assists. Travis Longbow had a goal. I'm just a little worried that just some nights the production is just not there outside of Jeff Teat. That's really what kind of led me to pick Calgary. It's another close game for Calgary that they've lost again.
We've talked about this a number of times, though, haven't we? Is that with all this talent, it all still runs to Teat, from Teat, into Teat. And if the game he gets bottled up, Ottawa only scores 3 or 4 goals. That's it. Because everybody is used to putting it to Teat, through Teat, from Teat. Now, granted, he's the best player on the planet, but there is so much talent. Jacob Dunbar wasn't even in the lineup, but Connor Kiernan, we're used to seeing much bigger numbers out of him. And from the other side, that's your other option.
Yep.
Right? And if he's not doing it, then everything's coming from the one side. You can load up on the left side, and that's it.
That's true. And
now Hellier's doing what he was brought in to do. He's there to facilitate, but he's also the other option on the same side as Kiernan. So you have Hellier and Kiernan on the opposite side of Teat.
Yeah. I was going to say he certainly has goal scoring ability still.
Right, but you got 2 goals from that side. That's it. That's frightening.
Yeah, it's relying just a little too much on Teat and or the left side in general.
Right.
I guess we could say all that, ultimately they do come away with the win. They're 5-5, but certainly, to your point, that's not going to be sustainable.
It certainly won't be in the playoffs.
Not in the playoffs.
You go against Saskatchewan, and what's going to happen? It'll be 21-4. Zach Ingles will see 78 shots.
I don't know. That might be their one in. That's Saskatchewan's only loss this year.
That's true.
So.
That's true. But Lightning
and I'm just saying because it could be, right now with them being at 500, we know 500's most likely going to be the cutoff to make or even not make the playoffs.
Right.
So, it's entirely possible that we see Saskatchewan against a 9-9 team, to kick off the first round. So,
well, let's address the elephant in the room, and that is Calgary. Now, I realize they're in a rebuild. I realize that. Everybody realizes that. However, being in a rebuild doesn't mean that you are absolutely anemic. And what's happened in the last number of weeks is anemic. There's been next to no goal scoring, and when there is, it's usually a blowout the other way already. So I'm wondering what's going to go on here. Tyler Hendricks, he was brought in there for this thing. He's supposed to, with Toronto and with Oakville in the summer, big body presence, in close, good scorer, good hands, nothing. You're looking at you're relying on Tanner Cook almost solely. He had 3 goals. He's not going to get you 13 goals in a game. Tyler Pace, 3 goals. Again, he's not going to get you 13 goals in a game. Combined, they're not going to have 13 goals. And if it does happen, it is going to be one we're talking about for most of our program. We're getting almost nothing from everywhere else. Hayden Dixon had such a great year last year. He has been almost invisible. He had a pair last night, but almost invisible. Even when I'm watching the game, I don't hear his name. I don't hear him being involved in much. Riley Lowen, I hear very little of him. These are the guys that have to get involved. We're talking about Brandon Maillet, but, he's a rookie. Granted, he's a very talented rookie, and he has a lot of moxie, but he's not anywhere near the biggest guy on the floor.
Yep.
And there's only so many beats he's going to have before, eventually the dog doesn't come jumping. And there's other guys there. Gauthier wasn't in the lineup last night, but even when he's in it,
He's struggled this season.
he's had a tough year.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, he's one of the few guys that came out of Panther City that isn't excelling.
Yeah.
And it's kind of, there isn't a very great explanation for it. It's just kind of
the other one that is sticking out to me like a sore thumb, and we touted him highly out of preseason and into the beginning of this season, was Noah Manning. He came out like a house on fire, like he'd been playing 5 years already. He has been quieter than a church mouse in the last couple of games. And that's concerning because they need his production. They need everybody's production, really. They need to have more options than just the two, because if you're able to shut down Pace and you're able to shut down Cook, they might pitch a shutout right now. That's not good. Now, the bright spot is the Calgary defense is still keeping teams within, with the exception of the one blowout the other week.
Yeah.
Keeping teams around 10, 11 goals.
They are. And
very winnable games that way. And Aiden Walsh, I cannot blame him for any of this stuff because he's been standing as close to being on his head as humanly possible without being on his head. Yeah. And at times I think he was on his head.
They were without they were also without Kyle Pepper and Bennett Smith last night. So
two big pieces.
Yeah. Yep.
So, I'm touting it that it's the rebuild, yes. But man, that's tough on a fan base when the guys who are supposed to produce aren't. And it's not from lack of trying. It's just something isn't being cohesive in there. You have, when teams are rolling, you see that flow. Those passes just sail through, threading needles. Everybody knows where everybody is. When things aren't going so great, that's when you see the pass, instead of going in the stick, winds up in the corner. And I'm seeing a lot of that. And just near misses, so to speak. And that little quarter thing. And watch, they go on a run now. They end the season, win 4 in a row or something like that. And all of a sudden, all is well. But just for this time being, the sticks are being squeezed a little bit hard, and they're feeling it. Now, Josh Sanderson is a great coach, and if anybody's going to get him out of this funk and get him on to square again, a young lineup, this is the right coach for it. Having Cordingley around there, having Sanderson around there, those are the right people for it. But it's got to be frustrating when it's just the pieces are there. The rebuild is correct. A couple more tinkers here and there, and they're going to be a force again. But for the time being, how do you get this all to be cohesive? But we'll keep our eyes on that one. Now we had a one of the highly touted games of the week, and that was Oshawa traveling down to 401 for 45 minutes, 2 hours if you're in traffic, into Hamilton to face the Toronto Rock. And of course, a minute into the game, because we knew this was going to happen as soon as we heard that Emerson Clark was being put into the lineup from the practice squad. So it was just a matter of when. Well, it took about a minute and a half, and let's get into this one, shall we? This idea of the championship belt when you didn't land one punch, maybe not a good idea. Ryder Gash wind up on the turf. I believe he slipped as he was about to hit him with his fourth, right hand. That was silly. But again, this is like two enforcers in hockey where it's already predetermined and we can do without it. I like watching Elijah. I love watching him play. We could have done without that one. Simple. It was a minute into the game. It really didn't set the tone and it really didn't solve anything, right? It was just there.
Right.
And the funny thing was Emerson Clark, he took an extra 2 minutes for roughing. So he was looking for it. But when you're going to have the championship belt a la Tai Domi, maybe you want to throw a punch that lands just out there. Anyways, after all that nonsense, we get into it. And, we had a track meet for the majority of the first quarter. There wasn't any scoring really going on until Dan Craig picked a corner beautifully with just under 3 minutes to go in the first quarter. And off a Josh Dawick pass, beautifully placed. And they're going inside, Mike. They're going inside. My heart smiles. They're going inside. Now, Chris Boucher gets the next goal about a minute and a half later. And, diving from behind the net. He doesn't score goals on 2 feet. It's just not in his lingo right now. But diving from behind the net and just snuck it into the short side just past a diving Doug Jamieson. And it was 2-0 after 1. In that first quarter, Troy Holochuk set the tone. Now, I'm going to come back to Troy at the end of the recap here because there's a couple of things I've noticed recently, and I love it. But Owen Hiltz, 13 seconds into the second quarter, and he scores, and it's 3-0 Toronto. Things are looking pretty rosy. Pardon the pun. Ty Kurtz comes back, and Dawson Theed back-to-back in the span of the under 30 seconds. And whoop, it's 3-2. And things are getting a little quieter over in Hamilton. However, Dan Craig with a blast, an absolute blast, high to low, overhand shot that beats Jamieson short side off a Challen Rogers pass, makes it 4-2. Josh Dawick from an outside vantage point, almost at the transition line, at the restraining line. Unreal. And it was an absolute laser. And that's 5-2. Challen Rogers, you'll hear his name a few times in this little recap. He was on fire last night. Off a Mark Matthews pass. Again, near the end of the half, and it's 6-2. Alex Simmons comes back to stop the run with a beautiful goal from in tight. And it's 6-3. Josh Dawick comes back, though, about a minute later, and off of Mark Matthews' feet, picks a corner, and it's 7-3 at the half. Country and Western night, y'all. So came our cowboy hats, our Toronto Rock cowboy hats, and we're doing a little bit of country singing. Brick is here. What's going on? Congratulations. Offense looks great with Oshawa. Thank you for being here. Ryan is going to join us one of these weeks soon, as soon as he can fit us into his schedule. We've been chatting about that, so maybe we'll talk more on Saturday at the Oshawa game. Coming into the third quarter, CJ Kirst opens up the scoring again after about 5 minutes of an absolute track meet, back and forth, up and down. Both goalies looking great. Troy Holochuk looked fantastic. Lots of kick saves, lots of toe saves, and on the other side, Jamieson has settled in, and we had ourselves a pretty good game going on. CJ Kirst scores at just over 5 minutes in. It's 8-3 Toronto. Emerson Clark gets his first goal since January of 2023. And not a cheapie at that. Real nice goal. 8-4. Challen Rogers gets one back, followed by Chris Boucher diving across the net. Again, remember, Chris isn't scoring on his feet, only through the air. And it's 10-4. Now, that's 6 goals. That's going to be an interesting stat we're going to talk about. With 2 minutes left in the third quarter, Dawson Theed starts his night. And he gets one off an Alex Simmons pass. It's 10-5 heading to the fourth. Things are still very, very happy around the TD Coliseum. Owen Hiltz actually makes it 11-5, and we have a 6-goal difference again. Here it comes. Dyson Williams scores a beauty. Absolute laser that went in, and it's 11-6. Now, Latrell Harris, he takes a penalty. Dawson Theed scores. Latrell Harris comes out, takes another penalty. Both of them questionable in my eyes. And Dawson Theed, he scores. The first one Theed scored was from in tight. The second one he scored was from further on out. Both were beautiful goals, and it is 11-8. Theed then scores his fifth of the night and his natural hat trick off a Ty Kurtz pass. And this one was from a little bit behind the top of the crease, and it just caught the corner. And we're at 11-9. Ty Kurtz grabs one from behind the net, diving in a la Chris Boucher, and it is 11-10. Now, not long ago, you heard me say, Mike, it was 10-4. It was 11-5. Things get a little tense in and around the TD Coliseum with 4 minutes and 17 seconds left and momentum firmly in the Oshawa hands, sitting on a 5-goal run. Well, Brad Cree gets leveled. Absolutely leveled, no call. But he's coming back and actually saves a goal off an Alex Simmons attempt, and he took a penalty for holding or interference. I can't remember anymore. But on that power play, the pressure was on, and they pressed hard, did the Firewolves. Robert Hudson came up big, soaking up a couple of shots. Troy Holochuk came up huge. He made 4 big game-saving saves in that power play that just changed everything right around. And again, toe saves, leg saves, kick save, you name it, all through there. And Challen Rogers comes down and off a Chris Boucher pass into the wide open cage, and it is 12-10, and that's the way it finished. Now, to get to my point here about Troy Holochuk, the biggest thing I think is Brandon Miller, as the goaltending coach, back with the Rock, because I am seeing more and more shades of Brandon in Holochuk's game. The toe saves, the kick saves, the movement in net looks a lot like Brandon Miller from way back, from his Wings days, even from his Rock days. Yeah. And I think the defense is playing that way as well. They're playing a lot more relaxed, and the transition game has come back. So we're looking at the future happening here. It's not just a youth movement over on offense. Now, Sam English didn't play last night, but CJ Kirst and Owen Hiltz both had strong nights. For Toronto, Owen Hiltz had a pair of goals. Challen Rogers had 3 goals, 2 assists. Chris Boucher, 2 goals, 4 assists. Josh Dawick, 2 goals, 4 assists. Yeah, and Troy was on my show a couple of weeks ago, and he's just so happy to be there, and he soaks up everything. And he's the one first at the rink, last away from the rink. So, yeah, I agree totally with you. Justin Martin, he got rocked midway through the game. Luckily, he came back, but he was at his speedy best in the game. But it was funny, before the Rock took those 3 penalties in the fourth, they hadn't taken a penalty all night. Now, what almost bit them? You'll never believe this, Mike. The Firewolves power play is what almost killed Toronto. That one thing that's almost non-existent? Well, they went 2 for 3 on the power play, while Toronto went 0 for 1 on the power play. So even with the tilt, in the first minute and a half, a very clean game played by Hall. Hard to say that, right? You have the tilt minute and a half, and you're thinking, okay, it's going to be all hell, fire, and brimstone. And, no, it was a track meet for most of the night. This is 2 young squads running up and down the floor, and, shots from everywhere. Inside, outside, upside down. If you are a fan of speedy lacrosse, you would have loved it last night. If you were a fan of big scores and a fan of heart-stopping stuff, you would have loved it last night. Shots on goal were tied at 51 apiece. Face-offs just slightly to Oshawa, 16-10. Ironically, neither have their face-off guy here. Well, you need to keep calling them out then, Ryan. Keep calling them out, because they're finally awake. But I think a lot of it, I had Owen Hiltz on the show on Thursday, and, they're starting to have fun. And they're starting to understand where each other is and where the plays are. and they're not all going on their own feel anymore. They are actually gelling week in and week out. They're getting stronger, and you can see it in the plays that are coming through. Even a couple of the plays that didn't work where, the pass is a quarter inch too high or whatever, it sails into the corner. There were a couple of times where I could see the quick stick just about to happen, and the pass just sailed over Owen Hiltz's stick a couple of times. And he's only my height, so he's short. Comparative. If it was a Challen Rogers there, that thing is in the net. But difference. But in an extreme for both teams, lots of upside for both sides. Oshawa could have easily mailed it in when it was 10-4. Easily could have hung it up in the fourth, and this would have been a 17-4 score. But nope. Yeah, if they would have had that outside shot, but my thing is, where would they put him? Where were they? They couldn't fit him in before. Now, you didn't have Sam English in the lineup in this one. Soon you're going to have Ty English also in this lineup as another first-round pick. Where would you fit him? It's also why Brian Cameron isn't sitting in Toronto anymore with the exact same lacrosse zone with that kind of shot, with one to go right through the mesh. But I would have loved to see Zach, man. I'm sorry to see him go the first time. I loved his game. But there wouldn't be a spot for him. Dan Craig is it's getting hotter by the minute because the answers are not coming anymore. You can only say the same thing how many times? We're growing, we're moving, we're growing. Well, you picked up Dawson Deeden. He's the only guy with hit 5 goals of your 10 or 11. Where's everybody? Simmons, Williams, highly touted, having great careers. All of a sudden, it's dried up this year. Lots of shots, but a lot of ill-advised shots too. It's not that the work isn't being done. It's just for some reason it's not coagulating. And you've relied this far on Jameson. Well, he's not going to pitch you an 8-goal game every single week. 7 goals allowed. That's just not going to happen. And the defense isn't strong enough to hold them to 7 goals. There are times when they just completely let down. I give you the second quarter when things came raining in for a while. And if Toronto's getting inside, well, then they're not notorious for going inside. So there's obviously holes and roots through there. So a little bit worrisome there. But on the Rock side, with the exception of the fourth quarter, for about 6 minutes. That's an interesting question because we talked about that a couple of weeks ago. Is Oshawa selling?
Yeah. Because they have plenty of assets, but I think they're trying to keep most of those assets together because it's a young core growing together.
And they only have 1 or 2 contracts they have to renew, right?
Correct.
That's it. So they don't have to worry about that either. But with the young squad, maybe not.
And I think the other thing we touched on was they kind of played the harder part of their schedule already now. Like they have a doubleheader with Philadelphia. I think they still have to play Calgary. A lot of the teams that they still have to play are closer to the bottom of the standings. They've already played. I think they've already played Saskatchewan. They've already played Vancouver. They've already played, Colorado. So
that's another thing too. They have no first-round picks in the next couple of drafts. So unless the deal is super sweet, I can't see it happening.
Yeah.
I
feel like that was by design, knowing that they had such a young core. Other than Rubish, basically.
I look at it this way. Also, is if let's just say that Glenn Clark pulls the trigger and does it, and it doesn't pan out, well, he just signed his death warrant. Whereas now he can still tout youth, and more or less keep his job. Just a thought. I may be off on that one, but that's just the theory on that one. When your team's not performing, if you can keep relying that it's just youth, eventually that will wear out. I'm sure it's going to get old before the season's out if it doesn't happen.
Right.
Yeah, the problem is with Andrew Kidd on IR now is they don't really have an abundance of goaltending right now either. So they're gonna have to hold off on that too. But that I didn't expect that. But because like I say, with only playing a couple of minutes a few weeks back, fall off the bench. But hey, all right, let's move on. Our next one, and this one, Mike, Philadelphia. It's too bad we don't have Pat here to celebrate. Pat, happy birthday. Philadelphia gave Pat his early 40th birthday gift, and that, of course, is they beat the Buffalo Bandits in Buffalo, in Banditland, 13-11, in front of a very, very close, very, very full house.
And
that's an interesting move. That's an interesting move. I mentioned about moving Jameson a couple of weeks ago, and the guy shut me down. Huge. But, if you're going to get a comparable goalie and a first-round pick in a draft like this, that if it works, he's a genius. If it doesn't work, he's out of a job. Simple. Is he willing to roll the dice with that, though?
And let's not forget that. Let's not forget the whole thing with Dougie almost going to Halifax back in whatever it was, 2020 or so.
Yep, signing the
the RFA, and then it got matched.
Mm-hmm.
So, I think Halifax is always.
If he's out of a job, then we can see that. If he knows that it's on the wall, well, then we can see that happen. That would be his last foray. And if it works, great. If not, you remind me of was it Mike Smith in Toronto for the hockey? You become a footnote. Interesting.
I mean,
interesting. I brought it up a couple.
He had Getty before. Just another thought.
Mm-hmm.
Getty was with the team when they were in Albany, so
Halifax is an interesting choice. You would almost think, it's funny because if Kotsopoulos doesn't work out, you'd almost think the Buffalo would be vying for that kind of service.
Yeah, but at that point, would Buffalo go after Warren Hill?
It's possible. But would Halifax get rid of him?
I mean, I guess that depends on whether they're looking to
because Halifax doesn't need any
recreate the Six Nations tandem in Halifax.
Right. That'd be interesting too, eh? All right, let's move on. Philadelphia.
Yeah, you'd have to think they're good. They're going to rotate the goalies if that's the case.
Well, yeah, it would be exactly like it is in the summer.
So,
but Philadelphia, and we thought this was a get-right game for Buffalo. And it turned out to be a get-right game for Philadelphia.
Yeah, the stars came out for Philly, so they must have listened to us. The whole strategy.
It's exactly what we were saying last week.
American field players, they get 4 goals and an assist each out of Michael Sowers and Brennan O'Neill in this win. Kyle Jackson, who they just signed, makes a splash with 2 goals and 5 assists. Joe Resteritz, a goal and 4 assists. Sam Leclerc, where's he been? A goal and 2 assists. 3 assists from Eric Fennell. So, yeah, I mean, that's I think this is the kind of scoring, that Pat and other Philly fans were kind of hoping to see every game.
So, I think it's a bit of column A and a bit of column B.
Yes,
right?
Absolutely.
If you took away the last 5 minutes of this game, I think we talk about how Buffalo was found a way to get right. But they just shut down altogether in the last 5.5 minutes of the game, and they were nowhere to be found. And when they needed them most, nobody was around. So the defense is looking their age now. And the offense has been having all kinds of problems. Josh Byrne has had a miserable year compared to any other year in his career so far.
Yeah, just 4
And if he's
assists.
not,
last
and
night.
if he's not on, and everybody is on Smith, he's not going to be that effective either. And Ian McKay, he is still the spark plug, but it's not sparking as often. And again, the rest of it looking their age. And when you don't have a Matisse in you got rid of Triolo, you got rid of Ron John. To me, that's showing that there's a bit of panic going inside now. Now that the rebuild is starting to happen, but you're mid-season.
Yeah, and I mean,
That's another thing too. Is Kluche more than losing Chase Fraser? Because yeah, Josh is having a rough time. He's got nobody to protect him, and there's no one with a secondary shot other than Nanakoke, and he's on the other side in front. So that's not helping. Occasionally McKay coming down, but that's not even solving the problem either.
Yep.
It's just this is the most uncohesive I've seen them in probably 5 years, maybe even longer than that. But this is going to be interesting. And Matt Vince with this new goaltending rule, where he doesn't have Dawson soaking up half the shots coming. This is another interesting mix because he's looking average.
It is. I do want to address that because we're already hearing it from Bandit fans. How unfair the 67.16 is with not allowing guys to stand in the crease and
play goal.
Just so everyone is aware, including Bandit fans, scoring through 59 games this year is 84 goals down from last year. And that's with this rule that opens up the nets effectively for shooters to shoot and score. And they've scored 84. The league has scored, as a whole, has scored 84 less goals to this point, this many games, as they did last year.
Right. Now, to this point that Ryan's saying, rule guys more important superstar. I've always said that. If you have everybody doing what they're supposed to be doing and doing their job, you're hoisting a cup at the end of the year. Superstars, yeah, we were looking at it on Ottawa. Teat going to get what Teat going to get. But if the rest of the guys aren't doing what they're supposed to be doing, nothing's happening. Isn't that ironic that they're the only team that hasn't been penalized for this rule? That's the irony of everything. I know Toronto's taken about 8 penalties over the last 5 weeks for it. I know when one wasn't called and the league spent their Wednesday screaming at all the refs. And from that weekend on, it's been a constant parade on goaltending penalties. So it's relaxed a little bit this weekend. I don't think I saw any, maybe one. But it's for the last few weeks, it's been absolutely upside down with them calling anything near. If your toenail is close to the crease, you're being called for goaltending, which is interesting. But yeah, the Buffalo hasn't taken one. That's funny. I'm thinking Buffalo's defense is getting a little up there in age. Maybe they can't make it back to make it to the crease. But this is the most interesting that I've seen that defense. And, that was the stalwart thing. They had 2 guys down on the line, but they were able to be athletic enough to also block the shooting and passing lanes. Now they're not able to do either. Now they're closer to it, and they're still not blocking the passing or shooting lanes. My question is Matt Vince having trouble seeing the outside shots? Because you're getting beat a lot from the outside. We knew that inside, if you get in there, 1, you're going to take a pounding, but 2, if you can get under his skin, you can get him off his game. But he was always solid from getting the shots he wanted from the outside. He's not seeing them as well because he's getting beat a lot from the outside. Between the crease and the restraining line in that zone over there, if you're firing it and it's going low, more times than not, it's finding its way in. And that's odd. Because as a reflex goalie, that's his money.
Right.
And if that's slowing down, that's it. Right. But, I don't think there's anybody in better shape in the league than Matt Vince. Still, to this day, he's a piece of iron. But, if the reflexes are slowing down because of life, age, it just happens. It could be any one of a number of things. I'm just seeing what I'm seeing and trying to make sense of it.
Yeah. Two other things I'll add. Dane Smith, 2 goals, 5 assists. He had 22 shots on goal. I think the next most was 7 by a Bandits player.
Yeah.
So, that's normally that's the kind of thing we'd see out of, Jeff Teed or Connor Fields, that many shots where they're just
Randy Stotts.
Yeah, that would be another one. So,
and it's funny because you're seeing the teams like this now. Halifax is not working for them. Buffalo is not working for them. Teams that are spreading it around, it's working for them.
It's working.
Back to your point, Ryan, of role players or superstars. Exactly on the money on that.
Yeah, so that brings me to my caption. That is Buffalo's remaining schedule.
Ouch. Ouch.
And I didn't separate, as I wasn't enough room on the banner for me to separate what's home and away. But, it's not too hard.
More away than home.
It's not too hard to look at that and think, yeah, they'll be lucky to go 500 through that stretch. And at that point, that will not get you into the playoffs. At 3-5, if you go 5-5 the rest of the way here, you will end up at 8-10, and you will likely not be in the playoffs.
Or you're facing Saskatchewan in the first round, sneaking into 8th. Not exactly the best. It's not last year. And in a one or done, I don't like the chances there.
And, we'll obviously get into week 12 a little later, but they are at Halifax, who already beat them once this year in Bandit Land. They're both obviously different teams now, but they are also both at 3-5. So whoever loses that game is now halfway through their season, and they're 3 games under 500. Not where either team.
When's the last time the Bandits were to be 4 in a row for losses?
It's been a while.
It's been a long while. It's been near the beginning of Chugger's tenure, when they were rebuilding from scratch, really. I believe it was before Matt Vince came on. Zach Higgins was still a goalie.
Yeah, and can you imagine that if Halifax does pull out a victory next week, that's 5 straight losses for Buffalo.
It's going to be a hell of a game to watch. Absolutely. On the other side, though, with Philadelphia, though, for the first time in a while, we can talk about Scott Domney resurrecting the transition game. Again, we got Ressa Terrence as the facilitator doing the Mitch Jones role, and I'm not crazy about that one, but, in this one, it worked. Kyle Jackson, you talked about already with a monster game of 2 goals and 5 assists. Welcome back, Kyle. Happy to be playing again. Brennan O'Neill and Michael Sowers. Now, do you think they took the time to map out these plays a la field lacrosse more than let you go out and try and figure it out yourself? Because I think if they are micromanaged, they might be able to, get more out of them as opposed to letting them play free as though you came up through Canadian Junior.
It's certainly possible.
I think we're going to see more of that hands-on from TK. And because you tried the other way and you're seeing almost nothing from these guys. Right. Letting them try and letting them feel. And, you figure Brandon O'Neill's been around a couple of years and maybe he's got that, no, maybe micromanage a little bit more and set more set plays and how to get things where they're supposed to be. And then you're set. Because otherwise, You're going by the seat of your pants. Now, do we get more people involved here? I still don't see anything from Liam Patton. I still don't see anything from Blaze Ridden. I still don't know what Blaze Ridden's role is. That's the concerning thing. Yeah, they got the win. Yeah, they beat a wounded Buffalo team, which, by the way, didn't look wounded in the first little while of the first quarter when it was 3-0 for Buffalo.
Right.
You know, thinking my bet looked pretty good. My only mistake. But, then it happened. But again, you're looking up and down the list here, and Evan Messenger, he had one shot on net. That's it. They need a lot more out of him, amongst other things, really. Eric Fennell had 3 assists, but we were touting his goal-scoring prowess in the preseason and his just being in the zone when he came to camp and came through preseason and into the regular season in the first couple of games. And he's been kind of quiet the last couple of weeks as well, through the San Diegos and through this.
Yep.
They need more out of him. Yeah. It's just, again, you celebrate the victory, of course, because a lot of good things happened here. And Nick Damoud in net, again, a lot of good things happened here. But I don't think it's sustainable like this. Again, it's the old saying, you got to see the forest through the trees. Yeah, you had the one good game, but is it sustainable that 4 or 5 games, we're talking about the 4-game run that they went on, and now they're sitting themselves in a playoff spot? Or are we talking about how they went 1-3? 2-2 maybe? I'm more looking down the road a bit because, their schedule isn't going to get that easy. They have Calgary next week, so they can continue to work on things. If they play like they do here, we're probably talking about Philadelphia's second win. However, Calgary has that blessing too that they can put together one strong game, and neither team is really wowing it on offense. Right. I give the edge to goaltending to Philadelphia with Damoud over Aiden Walsh, but not by much. Aiden Walsh is opening up my eyes the way he's playing right now because he's the bright spot in the back. Even the game I watched him live in Toronto, he looked good. He didn't look like he was out of position much. And what beat him would beat anybody. So that's the one thing, and defensively, maybe I give a slight edge right now to Philadelphia, but, a couple of weeks ago, I would have given a bigger edge. I haven't seen a whole lot of that in the last couple of weeks. I've seen a lot of guys who should be buying tickets. But we'll see. We'll see. I'd like to see this as the beginning of something really beautiful in Philadelphia, but is it sustainable? That's what I'm thinking. All right, let's move on. We got Georgia and Vegas, and we talked about this game as, of course, Brett Dobson just wowing everything, right? I think he's sitting with a 7.15 average even after this game. That's astounding. We're halfway through the season.
Yeah.
And just barely above 7. The closest to him, I think, is Dylan Ward with just under 9. That's almost 2 goals a game difference from anybody in the league. More with more. That's wild. That gives you a lot of latitude, doesn't it? And if some of your guys are starting to wake up now, a la Lyle Thompson with 3 goals in this game, that changes everything right there. The one thing I'm seeing from the Georgia squad is what I've been talking about with Toronto as well, is because there's so many rookies in the lineup, is it took a little time for them to get adjusted. And what better than to have Andy Secord, Sean Ferris, Eddie Como with that kind of lacrosse IQ behind the bench, and to have the patience while this is going on, and knowing again, seeing the forest through the trees, and knowing what the result will be eventually when this thing's just kind of ride the waters a bit. And having Dauber in net, man, that covers up a lot while you're learning, right? And sure enough, it's starting to work. And Georgia got out strong, man. They were out 3-0, pretty much halfway through the first. And the guys were supposed to score, right? Shane Jackson, Brian Cole, and Lyle Thompson. That sounds like things are pretty much in their way. For Vegas, now we know Fraser's out, but they still have a dynamite offense, but we're not seeing a ton of it anymore. Our defense is getting wise to what's going on. I don't know. Kluche got one back, and then Adam Wiedemann in transition, and it's 4-1 for Georgia after one. Caleb Benedict, someone I've been touting for the last couple of years, is feeling his way and is actually feeling it now. Comes out, less than a minute into the second with a power play goal. John Donville gets one back for Vegas, and they get on a bit of a run because you have Kyle Killen and John Donville again, and it's 5-4. We got a hell of a game going on. Tor Eccleston. How important was him coming back in the lineup for Georgia? Pair of goals to end the half. And, about a minute and a half apart. And one goal is now 3 goals, and you go to the half, feeling a little bit better about yourselves. Jackson Webster opens it up for Vegas in the third. Now, his name has to come up when we're talking about Rookie of the Year because he's such an integral part of this offense as a rookie. We know what he can do in MSL. We've watched him the last 2 summers just absolutely tear it up. But in the NLL, he's starting to get it going. And Buffalo, hold your ears. Mike Triolo scores, make it 8-5, followed by Brian Cole, and it's 9-5. Sorry. I like Mike. He's a really good guy, and I've known him for a bunch of years on and off through ALL, through Brampton, through a few other things. And I love seeing him get his opportunity because he's too good a player not to be playing. So, absolute kudos to him. Donville continues his good night. Kyle Killen again for Vegas, and it's 9-7. And again, it still looks like they're within striking range. Well, Shane Jackson gets one late into the third quarter, and again, we got a 3-goal deficit. Killen again. Are you seeing a theme here, Mike? It's either I'm talking about Donville or Killen, with the occasional splatter of Webster. I'm not talking about anybody else. Right? Lyle Thompson comes to life in the fourth, as he did in Toronto, which won them the game in overtime. But here, he came to life, and they still had the lead, and he took over the fourth quarter again. He had a pair of goals in that. Georgia wins 12-9. Now, 46-41 in shots in favor of Georgia. Dobson makes 32 big saves. Another good day at the office. Landon Keller makes 34 saves. I have no complaint about his game. Jonathan Donville has 5 points. No complaint about his game. Poitras, 3 assists. But if I look at the rest of the lineup, I see a lot of nothing. Mitch Jones, 3 assists. That has to be different. Jackson Webster had 1 goal. When they're on, he's getting 2 or 3. But there's a lot of, it's down to 2 people now. Chris Kluche had 1 goal. He needs to be more effective just to open up the other guys. Even when I look, he only had 5 shots on net.
Yeah, that's not nearly enough.
No. Killen had the most with 11 shots. After that, it was Donville with 8. And then we're into very low single digits after that. That's not enough to get it done. So, is Vegas on the right road? Yeah. Is Vegas anywhere near where we were touting them at the beginning? No, I don't think it is. And I think with Fraser out, that's a whole piece of their lineup that one will hurt.
Right.
Now, granted, that's your superstar thing again, and the highlight reel goals, but they're goals. And it takes a lot of defense to try and contain him, which opens up the other guys. So even when he's not scoring, he's a threat enough that on that side, he's pulling the defense across. So the slides aren't going as well. The switches aren't going as well because he's also rogue, so he can go all over the place. And he'll call the audible. So that's where I stand on that one. That gets a little bit frightening down the road. Now, when we take a look at Georgia, completely the opposite. I see more here now than I've seen most of the year, the last couple of weeks, since the Toronto game, ironically. Lyle Thompson, 3 goals, 5 assists. Shane Jackson, 2 goals, 6 assists. Torrin Ecclestone, 2 big goals with a couple of assists. Caleb Benedict adding. Brian Cole with a couple of goals. Triolo, Wiedemann, also adding goals. So you're getting it from more than 1 or 2 people. It's spreading it around now, and your transition game has woken up a bit. That with a stifling defense and a big defense. You know, I didn't realize exactly how big they were until I was watching them live the other week, and it's like, wow, that is a big, strong defense. And then once you get through all that, you have the best goalie in the league in that. In Dobson. It's a daunting event. They don't need to score 20 goals. They can score 9 and win.
Oh, yeah.
And they proved that week in and week out. And it's only going to get better as the season goes along. And don't forget, they're smart with their draft picks. So they got draft picks in the next 2 drafts, too. So if you think they're going to get stronger, yes, you're right. They're going to get stronger, too. So whoever they're seeing, you know, this time around, Jordan McIntosh, I think it's the first time in 4 games he didn't have a transition goal. Didn't need it. But he's been really their only transition. Now Wiedemann's back in there, and you got a little bit more going on in there. You know, Jacob Hickey, I would like to see a little bit more, but, you know, he's taking loose balls out and doing the other things. Trumbull. It's another one that, you know, I expect a lot of big things from, but still a rookie. So he's learning. And another big, big body. But, you know, he's in a good organization in the summer, too, with Peterborough, right? So it doesn't hurt.
Right.
But, yeah, so Georgia pulls off yet another one. So they're on the hunt now. But that brings us to our late games. And why don't we start off with Saskatchewan? We'll go into Saskatchewan first. And Saskatchewan and San Diego. And, you know, for a while, it looked like San Diego might just pull this thing off.
Yep. Saying that because I picked them.
Uh-huh. Well, that first quarter, you know, this is what, you know, Connor Robinson, this is what they got him for. And he lit up Chiliano. And he gave the defense fits. But also Dylan Watson and Trey Leclerc. Again, the guys are supposed to be scoring. We talked about this a bunch of weeks ago when we weren't seeing much scoring, that they couldn't just leave everything to Westberg. Well, thank you for listening. You know, it's now spread around. You know, Robinson's back in the lineup. You know, now you're getting production from Kavanaugh, Courier, Leclerc, Ben McIntosh. Over the last few weeks, he's been carrying the load too. Now you know, could be a facilitator as well. But, you know, when you're starting to look at even the transition game working, because the Dylan Watson goal was transition from DeChico. That's I'm seeing, you know, things are looking rosy in San Diego. You know, people's tans are coming back. They're not looking pale. But what's the Achilles heel there? 60 minutes of play. You know, 15 minutes of full tilt boogie. That's great. 4-0. Looks great. Great start. Then Saskatchewan wakes up. And they have a much better second half. Now, I really wish that the NLL would have gotten their technical difficulties fed, because I watched on screen telling me they had technical difficulties for most of that game. So I could only follow along, as I was watching the Rochester game, which when we get to that one, set aside about 15 minutes for that. What could go on in that game went on. But anyways, into the second quarter, Accioni gets Saskatchewan on the board. Westberg comes back and it's still a 4-goal lead. Enter Saskatchewan and some of the players we haven't talked about for a bit. Levi Anderson gets a goal. Watson gets one again, but Jake Boudreau gets a goal. That's big. Because if he's engaged, then now I think everybody in that lineup has been engaged in the last couple of weeks. I don't think I'm missing one person in that lineup who hasn't added something offensively in there, let alone what they're doing defensively and helping Siciliano. Austin Shanks, again, on the power play. Here's the thing that killed San Diego. Saskatchewan had 11 power plays in this game. What's the easiest way to lose a game? Take half a game of penalties.
Right.
Give them 30 minutes of power plays. If that doesn't gas your defense out, I don't know what will. And sure enough, as the game wore on, it didn't get any better, did it? Third quarter, Saskatchewan now takes over. Again, power play, Robert Church. Trey Leclerc gets one back on the power play, but then Keenan, Shanks, and Boudreau score, and, of course, Shanks is on the power play. Not to take anything away from the penalty killing from San Diego, because they were about 50% in this game. That's not too bad when you're talking about a high-octane offense like Saskatchewan. Can you imagine how what the blowout this would have been if they would have gotten 10 of 11?
True.
That's been the Achilles heel of San Diego. Whether you say the ref doesn't like me or they don't like me, you're sitting in the box 11 times. Toronto had one penalty or 3 penalties in the game. Oshawa had 1 penalty in that game.
Right, and they still outshot Saskatchewan 49-41 for the game. For shots on goal, even with all those power plays that Saskatchewan was given.
It's wild, and then San Diego didn't take advantage of their own. They went 2 for 6. If they went 5 for 6, we're talking about a different score. Then we're talking about we'll win on in overtime.
Right.
And for to tote San Diego for all things that's going on is for all the things that went wrong, they were still in this game right to the end. The fourth quarter didn't do them any justice either, but they were within striking range. It was 9-8 with 11:45 to go. And then Saskatchewan just kept them far enough away until Brock Haley put an empty net goal in there and sealed it with 22 seconds left. That would be the only time in that game when I knew that was over. Because even 11-9, with 1:28, I still wasn't sure. Because San Diego's got enough talent when you're looking at that lineup to do it. With Trevor Baptiste there, you're going to get possession 95% of the time off a draw. And then take a look at what they have there for offensive abilities. But, again, we're talking Ben McIntosh had an off night. He had 1 assist. Courier had 3 assists. Usually you're seeing goals from both of these guys. Kavanaugh, expect something from him. He had 2 assists. The bright spark was Dylan Watson in transition with a couple of goals. Trey Leclerc with a couple of goals. But then, you looked up the rest of the lineup, and even Westberg had a goal and 2 assists. So if they had one of their typical San Diego games, are we talking about an upset? Could be. Or is it because of Saskatchewan's strong defense why they had an off game?
Yeah, I mean, it could be both. I wouldn't want to give it all to the defense because we've talked about it.
Well, we already said San Diego shot themselves in the foot by taking 11 penalties. Whether
Yeah.
they're all warranted, I guarantee you 75% of them were.
Yeah, and this year, the Rush have been uncharacteristically undisciplined. At one point, three of
Yep.
the top five penalty guys were Rush players.
Right.
So I mean, they've managed to clean it up a little bit, but they're still a little more penalty prone than they have been in the past.
Mm-hmm. But overall, I like San Diego as a whole, and I think they're buyers coming come trade deadline for a couple of pieces.
Yeah, and
Good.
I mean,
And
I'll
with a
stick with
Wrigley
that. I mean,
healthy, that's another good
this
thing.
was their probably their most difficult home game remaining. They have Vancouver at home. They already won once in Vancouver this season. Then they have Vegas, Buffalo, and Halifax. So I think all four of those home games remaining are winnable.
It's gonna be a hell of a game against Vancouver, that's for sure. Because I'm talking about another team that's rolling,
Yeah.
but they have Achilles heels too, and we're gonna get to that in a second. Saskatchewan, just keep rolling along. The thing that I like the most about Saskatchewan is they can play any style of game you want to throw at them. You want to play physical, they can play physical. You want to be, finesse, they can do that. You want to play it where it's going to be run and gun, they can do that. Their defense is decent enough with Sciliato to be, tight when they have to be. So I like what we got there in Saskatchewan. And this is probably the closest to one of those 2016, 2018 teams that we've seen since then. And I do hope that the people in Saskatchewan realize that too. Start getting their butts back to the games. Because, one, it's warm in there. It's warm in fast hell. And two, it's fun. It's fun in there. I like going there. But, get an original 16 and away you go. But I really do, sit there wondering who is the team that can knock off Saskatchewan right now? Is there one? Vancouver's the closest one that comes to mind.
I'm not sure. I mean, I'd put Colorado in there.
That's true too. I didn't really think about that. But
in fact, I'd probably put Colorado over Vancouver right now. Just by a hair, but
that'll be another interesting mix. But it's all the teams that we're talking about in the West. That powerful East has kind of gone to
down a few notches.
Well, better get the NyQuil going on because you're gonna need something to keep the eyes open when I work the next morning. With these playoffs, it'll be at 2:00 in the morning. It'll work when I'm in Prague, because then it'll be like a mid-afternoon game. But anyways, let's move on to the last game of the week, and of course we saved the best for last because, well, what is to say about this that hasn't already been somebody holding their head going, what the? We talk about, last week I made specific reference 2 or 3 times that if I were in the league, I would have had Brett Brood, I would have had Brian Lemon, I would have had everybody front and center there sitting in the damn penalty box to say, we're here, play. Nothing stupid. And of course, what went on? Well, here's the pregame warm-up.
No officials on the floor, and all heck broke loose here as you see Jackson Subak and Tyler Biles shed the mitts and buckets and get after it at center floor during.
That's the pregame warm-up. Everybody warm now? Good. Did we do any playing, Mike? Now, remember, Hartley got the 1-game suspension, but he has obviously appealed it because he was on the bench. Now, forgive me for this, but if you're not going to play him, couldn't you just sat the suspension out and it's over and it's done and the end? And then you move on and next week
you could have, especially when you signed Cam McLeod to the practice roster.
I'm pretty sure Cam can count to 5, right?
So it just seems odd that they guy, Gary.
I'm not that guy. Harley May is. Yeah, I guess it's. He started. He started. He didn't finish. Anyways.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if we have any audio, or was Mike Hazen asked in the post game? Well, did anyone ask him why they chose to start Hartley or keep him active and not sit him? I mean, I had last week thought, that it might have been a good idea. Okay, if you know the 1-game suspension's coming no matter what, just sit him now. I mean, well, let's face it, he was the catalyst, for everything that went down last week.
Yeah, neither coach is going to comment on this one. It's a hot.
No, they did, and they showed him shaking hands before the game. Just okay, hey, quick handshake, walk away. Like that's done. So and obviously you could add that later in the game when Hartley did come out of his crease, Owen Grant kind of pulled up when he could have intensified the situation even more. And chose not to. So, these teams obviously aren't going to meet again, unless they meet in the playoffs. But Rochester came out firing first, Jake Pisano getting on the board, less than 15 seconds into the game. Claridge tied it for Vancouver, but then Rochester looked like they were the aggressor early, going on a 3-goal run. Dixon and Fields.
We know, Ryan. We know.
Dixon and Fields trade goals, and Rochester's up 5-2, so it's not looking so great. But then Jesse King and Curtis Dixon take over. King with the natural hat trick, Dixon with 2 more. So he has a hat trick. They both have a hat trick in the first quarter, and they're leading 7-5. And
it's worse from here for Rochester.
It did. Outscored 6-2 in the second quarter, with Dixon picking up another 4 goals. He had 7.
But each one of those Vancouver goals in that second quarter, with the exception of one in a row there, were power plays. Rochester was just killing themselves with penalties.
They were. So they finished with 32 on the night to Vancouver's 25. But big part of this win, the Vancouver power play, 5 for 7.
Yeah.
And keeping the Nighthawks at 50% themselves.
It's also Curtis Dixon. He ran wild, right? He had 7 goals by the half. Which got him to 600, but that's insane. That's insane.
He did, but I mean, I'd still say maybe there's a little bit of concern that they kind of just let their foot off the gas a bit, in the fourth quarter.
Well, that's the second half, and and that came down to the very last second, really. That more conclusive, and that might have been a tie game. Wouldn't that have been the comeback of comebacks?
Yeah. I mean, down 13-7 at the half. I mean, they claw back to make it 15-10 after 3, and then close the gap slowly with Fields and Lanchberry in the fourth. Keegan Ball makes it 16-12. But then Kyle Waters stings the corner. And suddenly, less than 4 minutes left, and it's a 2-goal game. Fields scores again. Now there's less than 2 minutes, but it's a 1-goal game from a 6-goal lead.
And enter the last 8 seconds or 10 seconds of the game.
Yeah.
For complete dramatic effect. Rochester thinks they tied the game up.
It certainly was. No, but Vancouver does escape with the 16-15 win. And I mean, obviously there's going to be questions about, whether Hartley even should have played, like you said, or whether they should have just gone ahead and sat him. I mean, they're home against Rochester next week, and then I forget who they have in week 13 offhand, or if they even have a game in week 13. I know week 13.
Rochester's got Ottawa. Rochester's got Ottawa next week.
Ottawa next, and then I think after that, I'm just looking, they do not play in week 13, but I think they have a doubleheader week 14. They're home against Saskatchewan.
And they have a Sunday game, don't they? It's one of these weeks. I think it's March 6th or March 7th.
Maybe later, yeah.
Yeah, it's the 8th day they play of Calgary as a Sunday home game.
Okay, hosting Calgary, yeah.
I might make my way out there for that. I'm not sure about that one yet. But yeah, that's I don't know. It's a strange thing how they look like a juggernaut at the beginning of the year, and they're coming back to earth a little bit here. And I don't know.
Yeah, 4-4, and I mean this is going to be a big game with them in Ottawa. Ottawa's 5-5. They're 4-4. They're going to have Saskatchewan after that. So, and then that Calgary game. If somehow they're sitting at 5-6 or 4-7 even, that's right before the trade deadline. I believe Jake Elliott said on this broadcast last night that the trade deadline's March 9th. So
yeah, or that's March 6th, March 8th game on a Sunday is it's going to be a very important one as well. Just to show the timing is everything. My Thursday show, NLL Lacrosse Talk with Frank Stanisi and myself. This week I have General Manager of Rochester Nighthawks, Dan Carrion. So it should be an interesting week. It's been interesting conversations. What everything going on, and State of the Union really with the trade deadline coming up, and looking strong and yet being vulnerable at the same time. Getting Cam McLeod for insurance and things like that. So a number of things that we'll be discussing on that show. So 4:00 Thursday afternoon. If you're not doing anything, please join us. And if you've missed it, no worries. It'll be up on all of the pages as well as on our YouTube page and all across all the time. So over the next number of weeks, there's going to be a number of big time guests. Deacon Knott's going to be joining us at one point. Thomas McConvey's scheduled to come on the show as well. I've got one of the Firewolves coming on. I'm not sure who I will find out this week coming on as well. So the next 5-6 weeks are going to be some really interesting guests on there. The last few weeks have been great. Owen Hills was on last week. Pat Madalena the week before that. Troy Holochuk before that. So it's been a pretty steady flow of some pretty interesting guests along the way as well. Upcoming, we have we got a big week coming up, man. Friday we have Colorado in Vegas to start the week off on a really busy week. Buffalo and Halifax on Saturday, which is also going to be a very interesting game where it comes to who's a buyer and who's a seller, because in my eyes they're both sellers. But this is going to be the match for who is ahead of who and who might sneak into the playoffs. Ottawa and Rochester, both are having issues lately, so it's going to be, and both have the firepower to get out of it. So are we going to see the explosiveness, or are we going to see two teams that are trying to get it together? I mean, interesting game. San Diego is into Oshawa on Saturday. I should be there for that game. That's going to be an interesting one as well. Vancouver and Saskatchewan. That's another one that's circled on my calendar as a must-see.
Big.
Must-see game that will be PVR'd. Philadelphia and Calgary. Again, is this the one that Philadelphia builds on, or is this one that Calgary gets right on? Interesting week. And then Toronto starts the home and home with Colorado. So the next 2 weeks for Toronto is not going to be very easy. Keep in mind the next Toronto home game is bobblehead night. Latrell Harris bobbleheads. More things to agree with me at home. Nice shelf of things that agree with me. It's the only thing that agrees with me at home. Anyways, on a Sunday, we have Georgia into Calgary for an 8 p.m. Eastern game on a Sunday. Now, I realize it's 5 or 6 p.m. Pacific, but still, that's late for a Sunday game, isn't it?
Yeah.
Those are the 2 p.m. games, right?
Well, we'll have live coverage.
Yes, we'll have the scores as we go along. We're back to 8 o'clock in the evening next Sunday night. We're back to our regular time. All the cast of characters will be back. Shawn should be back from the ill, and Pat should be back from the birthday, and we'll be back. But it's Super Bowl Sunday, Mike. What you got? Sorry, Jake.
As much as it pains me, since my team had him last year as their starting quarterback, I'm going to go with Seattle.
All right. I'm not. I've been a Patriots fan since 1970.
My condolences.
Since 1970, I've been a Patriots fan. Well, a few years ago, we can talk about the 1 yard line again if you'd like. Run the ball. But hey,
I think they won't have.
Shall we say we're just happy to be there? I didn't expect us to be in the Super Bowl, so I am going to enjoy every minute of it. I'm going to enjoy every commercial of it. I am going to enjoy the neighborhood pub down the street. If you're in the area, Thirsty Fox is where you should be. 1028 Eglinton. I got to give them this little clip saying, "See, I do it for pro bono." We'll do it for beer. Anyways, if you are out and about watching a game, please do it safely. Please realize it is only a game. We'll have a winner and we'll have a loser. And tomorrow the sun will still come up. So let's not get too wrapped up in all this stuff. We do this, forget about life. Anyways, that brings us over to last words. Mike, last words to you, obviously, since Shawn isn't here to give us any last words. He didn't give us any first words either.
Yeah, I think it hit the nail on the head with the games to watch next week. Buffalo and Halifax, losers 3-6 after 9 games. More importantly, if Halifax wins, that's a sweep of Buffalo. And Vancouver, Saskatchewan, chance to put a dent in first place for the Warriors, continue their momentum. So that will be interesting. Saskatchewan's undefeated at home, I believe, still. I think they're the only undefeated team at home.
Right.
But Vancouver, I believe, is undefeated on the road. So
I think next week is going to be an interesting week. If everything works for me, I should be able to see the tail half of the Oshawa Outlaws and the Whitby Steelhawks game and visit with Ryan, and then maybe we'll have dinner and travel together over to Oshawa to the Tribute Center and watch the Firewolves that evening with San Diego and have a nice 1-2 punch in the day. We'll see how that all plays. Hopefully that schedule will work for that. But I definitely will be at the Oshawa Firewolves San Diego game in the evening. So we'll play more on that. But that'll do it for this week. Again, Shawn, feel better. We're missing you. Pat, happy birthday. And we look forward to seeing you guys both with us again next week. For Muffler Mike over in Connecticut, I am Gary Groob in Toronto, wishing you the best of weeks. Remember, have fun tonight and also be safe tonight watching the Super Bowl. And until we meet up again next week, remember, keep your sticks high and keep your spirits higher. And have a great week. See you next week at 8 p.m. Take care.